Alright, welcome to part 2 on the 1996 Suzuki Rm125. Last video, we picked this thing up for $600 and it was a pretty popular video. People seem to like the old Suzukis. This one's from 1996 like I stated before, and we got it for a pretty good deal. But unfortunately, as you guys saw last video, the rod bearing was completely gone. Just completely flattened out. So for this particular dirt bike, 1996 year, they do not make a new crank. So you can't just buy a new crank and rod. You have to buy the rod separately and then push it onto the crank. So luckily, our crank was still fine, but our rod and rod bearing, lower rod bearing, was junk. We finally got this crank and rod bearing back after being rebuilt. A guy in Amro rebuilt it, so I think he did a pretty good job. He sent it out to a guy who rebuilds them. I don't know the guy's name, but he said he does a good job. He balances them. It was $120 to have this thing pressed on. It was 80 bucks for the actual rod and bearings. And this rod and bearings is a Pro X. I don't have the box for it, but it's a Pro X. You can see made in Japan. So it's a pretty good one. It was 80 bucks. And the bearings are smooth, and the guy said that was a decent one to get. So we went with that one, and it looks like it's all good to go. There's a little side to side, maybe like a millimeter, and then no up and down play, and that's what you want when you're looking at the rod bearing in there. The crank looks good. There's a little discoloration on it from getting hot from before. It looks like the guy took that off of there. You can see a little discoloration, but it looks like he smoothed it out and cleaned it up for me. So that should all be good. We got the bearings in as well, the crank bearings. As you guys know, the previous bearings were junk. They must have overheated, and they're just a little bit crunchy. So we got new ones, Pro X again, and then we got the new seals to go with that. On the engine, we'll come over to the engine. We got it all apart. So this bearing, you can see, it's a little bit crunchy, and then the one in here is just a little bit crunchy, so I figured while we're in here, might as well replace those. And then we've got the new seals for them. This seal actually presses in from the outside. You can see that little one right there. So that one's pretty easy to install, and then the other one right there, if the left side blows, you can just replace it by taking off the flywheel. So today's plan is going to be rebuilding the whole engine. Unfortunately, the gasket right here for the engine is discontinued as well. This is not the dirt bike year to buy. 1996, pretty much everything is discontinued, and they don't sell aftermarket parts. So this gasket is, they don't make it anymore. Like I said, discontinued. I cannot find it anywhere. Not even like a stock OEM one. Can't find them. So what we're going to do is put some gasket material on here and hope for the best. Hopefully it doesn't leak. This gasket is in decent shape still. Obviously it's not perfect, but I think it'll get the job done. But everything is clean in here. There is no metal chunks or anything, so everything is good and cleaned out. We sprayed it out with brake cleaner, so everything is clean. All we have to do is put it all back together, and then the piston and cylinder are good as well. So we got pretty lucky there that the piston and cylinder were fine. Otherwise, I probably would have had to part this bike out because, like, again, they don't sell cylinders for this thing. So the clutch also looked good, so everything here is good to go. We're going to get this crank and the bearings in the freezer and let those sit for a couple hours before we start the process. That makes it easy to install. All right, we got the engine laid out over here. I went ahead and got this gasket all prepped and took off all the little pieces that were inconsistent with the rest of the gasket. This is all ready to go. I also sprayed out the whole thing again with brake cleaner. You can see how clean it is in there. And then I made sure all the bearings were good. So you can see all the bearings are really smooth in there. And then I went ahead and took out these bearings, crank bearings. If you listen closely, you can hear a little crunchiness. So those are definitely bad, or at least getting to the point where they do need to be replaced. So we're just going to replace them. And I went and cleaned out the area in here to install the new ones. And I did the same with this one over here. Cleaned everything out with brake cleaner again. Made sure the transmission was all correct. I looked at a diagram just to make sure, because I haven't touched this thing in a few months, it seems like. So I made sure every part was there, everything is good to go. And then I cleaned out the area where the bearing will go. And that looks all nice and clean. Alright, the bearings have been in the freezer for about 17 hours. So we're going to take the heat gun, heat up around the outside of the bearing holder right here, just so that it expands this way out, and then the bearing will be cold and that expands this way, so it should drop right in. So we'll see if that works here. Get it nice and hot. Alright, I'm going to run to the freezer here quick, see if this bearing drops right in. Hopefully. Oh, here we go. Well, that didn't go right in. I think that's bottomed out though. It's hot still. Maybe a little bit more. Well, that one's done, but that did not go in very smoothly. I had to really pound on that thing using a socket like this so it gets the outer edge of the bearing. So luckily we had that, because that did not drop right in. But bearing's smooth, so that's good. At least that one's done. We might have to heat it up a lot more for that bearing to drop in, because that did not drop in at all. Alright, here's the next one. And it doesn't really look like you can pound on it too much. So we really have to heat this one up. Here we go. So that one didn't go in easier either. I don't know what's going on with those. Alright, now that we got the bearings in, we're going to put the crank in the right side of the engine. So we're going to drop the crank into this bearing first. So we're going to heat up this whole bearing area right here. Then grab the cold crank, drop it right in. Alright, so hopefully this crank drops right in. Otherwise, we're going to have to take it out and do it again, because you can't pound on the crank. We're really going to let this heat up, and hopefully that does the trick. Should just slide right in, bottom out. Go in like this. There we go. That went right in. That bottomed out. So that was pretty lucky. Alright. You can see how cold the crank is. Just making sure it's all the way in there. You can see. Oh yeah, perfect. Alright, that's awesome. So before this thing gets too hot, we're going to get some gasket maker on here and then put the other case half on this one. Alright, here we go. Let's see if it goes on easily. Everything is good to go. Make sure everything's lined up here. Looks like it's all good. We might have to press it on, but we'll see. We might have to push that together. Alright, we're gonna crank this gap shut, hopefully. Let's see what happens here. You can hear it going. See if she's shut. Yeah, that's crank shut. That sucks. Crank is tight. That's not good. That's not good at all. Crank is really tight in there. Oh, that's why. Duh, it was attached to this thing. Okay, crank is smooth. Oh, that was a close one. Just because it was attached to this thing. Duh. That got me really worried there for a second. Alright. That tool came in handy. That's the Tusk tool. But as we can see, hopefully, crank is super smooth. Wow. That's awesome. That is extremely smooth in there. So I'm pretty happy with that. And then the transmission obviously spins. So that could not have gone better. All right, we're gonna put the seals in. I put the other one in. I like to put a little grease around the whole seal, just so that it's got a nice tight seal when we put her in there, so no air leaks happen. This one's going in to the right side over here. Then we're just going to use a socket to drive that in the rest of the way. Just kind of pound that in the rest of the way. Pretty good. Must have gotten nicked by something. Ouch. Alright, to get the stator on, there's a little arrow right here. It lines up with the line that's right underneath this bolt. I already got that bolt on, so we're just going to get the other bolts on. Don't tighten them up too much, because you'll strip them out and then you won't have anything to hold your plate on here. So don't go crazy tight with them. Just tight enough to hold it in place here. Alright, then we can get our flywheel on next. Alright, here's the flywheel. There's a woodruff key that goes in the little slot right here. Probably should have put that on before I did this. Just makes it a little bit more difficult. Alright, we're back. We've got the woodruff key in there. So the flywheel's going on next. Make sure it lines up with that little slot right there. Give it a little hit with the hammer to make sure it's seated. Just a very small tap. Out of the way. Everything moves smoothly. We've got the nut. Nice and tight, super smooth. Alright, that's all set to go. Alright, we're over at the clutch side. So the first thing we're going to do is put in this water pump gear actuator. This is going to go right here. And make sure that you've got the bearing on it right there. So it's going to go right into there. Spins freely like that. Then we've got this, we've got a bolt, a washer, and then this gear. There's no marking on the gear, so it's just going to go on this rod, and there's no way to mark it. So let's just see if we can find the fitting for that. That's just going to go on there like that. Just kind of tap it down with the hammer just to make sure it's on there all the way and seated. We don't want that coming out. And then we've got the washer and the bolt. Goes on like that. And we'll try to torque that down. Alright, that's on there. Now we've got the clutch. So we've got the bearing right here, roller bearing. And there's this thing that goes on there as well. So the roller bearing goes over like that. And you've got the outer clutch basket. So this has to line up with a couple different things. You've got the gear right here it needs to slide into, and then the gear for the kickstart, and you can see it just slid right in after I moved the kickstart gear there. That's good to go. And then we're gonna have a washer. Goes on like that. Got the inner going on. Like that. Another washer. And then you've got the nut. Alright, we got the nut torqued down. Let's get the plates on next. So it starts with the friction plate. These are all oiled up already. And the steel. Doesn't matter which way the steel goes on, as long as you're consistent with how you put them on. So the round side, I'm going to face up, and then we'll do that for the rest of them as well. And we'll just keep on going. Alright, we got all the plates in. Now the pressure plate can go on. And that's good. Springs are going on. Alright, then we gotta get the starter gear in there. Alright, we got the clutch cover on, everything is lined up, everything shifts, everything is smooth. We're going to now install this into the bike, and then we'll do the top end in the bike. Alright, let's try to get the engine in the frame here. Alright, engine is in. It's over smoothly. Super smooth. So that's good. We're going to now install the top end. Alright, we're going to lube up the bearing right here with some 2-stroke oil. Nice and coated in there. We're going to lube up the cylinder with some 2-stroke oil. Alright, we got the cylinder nuts torqued down. Time for the head. These little gases go in here. So Alright, torque on the head nuts right here, 18 foot-pounds. Alright, I went ahead, put the pipe on, the seat on, the plastics on, and got everything hooked up. So I don't really know why this crank bearing failed. I'm thinking maybe the gas was mixed wrong. So we're going to drain out the gas tank and make sure it's 40-1 on the first start, just so that that doesn't happen again. And then we're going to get some coolant in it and then some oil in it as well. All right, let's put some 40-1 in it. All right, hopefully we don't have any leaks. It's topped off in there. So far no leaking, that's a good sign. All right, next is oil. All right, we've got exactly 700 milliliters right here going in. All right, here we go. First start coming up. All right, here we go. Gas is going on. First start attempt. Praying it starts. That would really suck if it did not. Choke. Maybe the spark plug? Not sure. Doesn't want to start. Alright, we have good spark. I put a little gas down the cylinder. Let's see what happens. Well, probably needs a carb clean. I don't think I did a carb clean on this one, so we'll come back after that. All right, let's see. Looks like the throttle might be all the way up. Oh, she started. Let's see if we can get her to run now. Consistently. Here we go. Kind of sounds like the pipe is plugged up. Doesn't it? But it doesn't sound too bad. It just sounds like it's running really rich right now. So I'm not too sure what's going on there. When I did put the pipe back on, a little oil did drain out of it. I'm guessing the pipe was pretty filled with oil. But I'll probably take off the silencer, look at that, see what's going on. See if there's a clog in there or something. But yeah, runs good. At least it runs. That's the main thing. So it was all put back together right, and everything went pretty smoothly. So I've got confidence that it should run for a long time, as long as that guy rebuilt the crank correctly. But next video, we'll get this thing running right, dive a little bit deeper into it, and then take it for the first ride. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. And until next time, we are out.